I want to have a quick conversation about SEO for podcasters. So, if you're listening to me, I want to explain to you how to be discovered by search engines, how to be discovered organically, and how to really orchestrate everything to make sure that your audience finds your content. And so, let me first give you the overview we need to pay attention to. So, when we think about SEO for podcasters, we're thinking about discoverability. It's really important. And the thing here is that nowadays you have content flowing from all places. You have digital content, you have a video, you have audio, and in that space, SEO is really important, especially if you're a podcaster and you really want to really stand out. Okay, so when we talk about you actually standing out, you have to pay attention to a few things to sort of draw the search engines to your podcast. So you got to think about the episode's description. You got to think about an embedded player. You got to think about the episode's show notes, resources mentioned in the episodes. Those are really important in terms of backlinks and front links, and also supplementary materials that clarify or reinforce your episode's content. And the whole thing here is that your podcast is going to be there for several months or several years, depending upon the nature of the content, whether it is evergreen or something that's linked to the news. But it's really important if you want to ensure that people looking for reliable information really find your content. You really want to reinforce the SEO part of things. And when we talk about SEO, it's not just about search engine optimization. We're talking about having something systematically done on every episode. So you got to have a system in place. Either you use software to sort of have the right tags for your podcast, or you have a team behind you that actually does everything, or you do it yourself. Okay, but you got to do things systematically. That's the name of the game here, systematically. So if you can't just do it once and just forget about it, because SEO is something that goes in the long run. So when we talk about the SEO, especially search engine optimization for podcasters, we're thinking about long term, but also we're talking about organic search, and also everything that revolves around the sort of niches you're going after. This is really important. You got to choose the tags, you got to choose the terms, you got to use the words that appeal to your audience, that resonate with your audience, that also makes sense to the search engines. Very important. By the way, boss, welcome back to the show. It's really a pleasure to have you here. Make yourself comfortable. You are going to enjoy today's conversation. So when we talk about SEO for podcasters, it's important to understand what a search engine is anyway, okay? So when we talk about search engine, you have to think about Google. You have to think about Bing. You have to think about Yahoo. You got to think about, AOL and other search engines. It's how the internet is actually organizing content, is organizing data, right? So if you're a podcaster, you want your content to be discovered by the search engines. You got to speak a language that basically appeals, if you will, to those search engines, and everything happens through SEO. So as a podcaster, there are really two sides of your SEO strategy, if you will. Your podcast SEO hones the performance of the show inside listening apps, and your overall SEO is where you classically try to make your website rank well in Google. So if you don't have a website, that's fine too. You don't need to have a website, but it really helps if you have a place where you are hosting all your episodes. That's what I mean by having a website. Okay, so think about your SEO as not only episode SEO, but also your content SEO overall. So the importance of SEO for podcasters is really well established, because podcast discoverability, or how audiences find new shows to connect with, it's kind of complicated. Many people ask for recommendations from friends and family directly or on social media. And when people experience a podcast they love, they tell everyone they know about it. So one thing we have seen here is that people actually, it's like word of mouth. But see, the thing is, if you're a podcaster, you want to actually stay away from the word of mouth, because you can't really rely on word of mouth. You got to have something systematic that really draws traffic organically and consistently to your website, and also to your episodes, every episode that you have. Now, mind you, yes, you can submit your podcast to directories. You can submit your podcast to not just directories, but also you can have ads on Facebook or on Google or YouTube. But if you want organic search, if you want organic traffic, SEO is really the way to go. And SEO puts that control back into your hands in terms of discoverability, but in terms of organic content. By the way, boss, I want to quickly remind you of today's topic. We are having a conversation about search engine optimization for podcasters. Now, let's talk about the steps you need to really take if you want to optimize your podcast keywords, and so how you really clean everything to make sure that your content is discoverable to the search engines. The first thing you want to do here, you got to pay attention to something called your podcast title. Now, this can be your title, the podcast title, or it can be the overall podcast name. It really depends on how you actually structure things. Okay, there are a lot of different strategies to come up with a perfect podcast title. So in terms of SEO for podcasters, you should actually focus on what your show does, how it does it, and who is it for. So all the terms that you are using, those terms should resonate with your audience. Okay. So getting back to so when we talk about if you were to, let's say you were to run a podcast, to host a podcast about culinary excellence, like food in general, you want to use words that really appeal to all the fun gourmets that are out there, including myself. Right, you want to use words that really appeal to us, and you want to use those words in a systematic way. And so, if your target audience searches for a podcast to help them enjoy learning about foods in general, which show, like, what would they click? What kind of podcast title would they click on? Okay, it's one of those things where you have to really be very careful. This actually shows that you know your target audience. You got to know your target audience. You got to know whom you're talking to, okay? So whatever great name you actually come up with, be sure to run a quick search to make sure no one else is using it. You can also change your podcast title at any time. So if you are already running a podcast and think the name is not working for you, you are not bound to it, okay? So you have actually a lot of tools on the internet, and you also have automatic name generator and automatic name generators that allow you to, really title your podcast in a certain way. Now, the name is important, but the most important thing is that name has to resonate with your audience. Because if you have a name that sounds good to you, that sounds fantastic to you, but that name does not appeal to your audience, you ain't going anywhere, okay? And will be a waste of time. So the first thing you want to do when it comes to SEO for podcasters is actually the podcast title. The second thing you want to pay attention to when it comes to SEO for podcasters is a podcast description, okay? So your podcast description is really crucial, not only to how people find your show, but whether or not they actually hit play. So it's one of those things where the most important element for potential new audiences is actually the description, okay? And search results display the description as a part of the link preview. So don't waste any of this space with this is the podcast about blah, 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 or in this podcast, we are going to talk about blah, 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 blah. I mean, people know this is a podcast. So why would they actually even rate again that we're going to talk about this? No, just go straight to the point. Go straight to the point. Start by telling a story. It's all about storytelling. It's all about your ability to tell a story, okay? So good SEO for podcasters gets straight to the point here. The audience wants to know what's in the box, how it works, and who is it for. You can't control how many characters the directory displays on every user's view, or whether they use a mobile device or a tablet. So the first sentence should work as a compelling standalone, even without the rest of the text to elaborate on it. Okay, so this is really important. You got to go straight to the point, and you need to start. You need to come out of the gate with a bang of an introduction. The introduction is really important. Now, it's important to also understand that you want to really make sure that you actually include some keywords in that very first sentence of the introduction, okay, of the description, if you will. So you want to really make sure that you have that. So because a good description is actually the link between a new listener finding the show and hitting play. It works alongside all the other SEO for podcasters assets that I'm just talking to you into this conversation, okay? So your podcast description can still show up in Google and other search engines, but it's important to really understand that you do not, as I said earlier, you do not control the real estate that directories will allocate to your description. So you want to actually, the very first sentence, that's the only thing that you actually know for sure will be seen by a person searching for a podcast. So Go straight to the point and don't waste time on something trivial. By the way, boss, I want to quickly remind you of today's topic. We are having a conversation about SEO for podcasters. I'm just talking to you about how to actually construct your search engine optimization if you're a podcaster. I want to talk to you about the episode title, and this is another important criterion when it comes to SEO for podcasters. See, the whole thing is you can have a great podcast title, you can have a wonderful podcast description, but if the episode title doesn't appeal to your audience, you ain't going anywhere. Okay. Now, specificity and knowing actually what your audience wants is the name of the game with your episode title. So you got to be specific. Okay, specificity is important. You got to really understand now for when I'm talking about specifics, I want you to go straight to the point. In other words, when people hear the name of the name of the episode, they know exactly what to expect. Okay, and it has to also be it has to appeal not only to the audience, but it has to also be in line with what the audience is hearing elsewhere from your competitors. Okay, and so if you have an episode about baking mock apple pie, for instance, you want to put mock apple pie in the title. This will have much more impact than any punt about Ritz crackers, however necessary this may be. So go straight to the point, okay? Specificity is really important. So this is why you see so many episode titles with the main title, a colon, and a subtitle like Mastering Mock Apple Pie, Secret to a Flawless Full Fruit Creation. It's because they're trying to put a lot of words in the title for SEO purposes. And that's good. That's really good because you want to put all the important words up front. And that's how you would do SEO anyway, not just for podcasting, but in general. You want to put the most important words in the first few sentences or in the first few sections, okay? So be specific, go straight to the point, and also trying to use words and terms and concepts that appeal to your audience. If you are a podcaster, chances are you know what your audience is looking for. Okay, now and so you want to think of your podcast episode titles as the names of nonfiction books. Okay, tell folks what it is about and what they will get from it. Make hidden play irresistible to them. Then all you need to do is deliver. Okay, and being delivering is really important because that's how you are going to build loyalty, and loyalty is important for your long-term success as a podcaster, whether you are a beginner or an experienced podcaster. So besides the podcast title, description, the episode title, you also got to pay attention to the podcast episode description, aka your show notes. Okay, here is another place where you can't afford to waste character space. Your episode description or show notes is what's going to get them to listen. So the opening is kind of crucial because of how directories and social media posts display the descriptions. The rest of your show notes don't have to be as tightly condensed, but that first paragraph is like a caption for a magazine photographs. Okay, so it's one of those things where you always have to be. Do you want to be upfront in the first few letters so that people know exactly what the thing's about? Don't try to waste time doing like a blah 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 blah. No, go straight to the point. And so think about Twitter, now called X, right? You have a certain number of characters, and you want to really focus on what you really want to deliver in those like condensed space, like less than 100 characters. And you also want to pay attention to your podcast, blog post, and written content. So this is another place. And so your podcast website helps you provide information serially or connected by topic. And so that's what they call it. And so a podcast website with blog posts and written content makes your content more meaningful, as well as attract search traffic. And there are loads of different ways that the content in your podcast episodes will connect and update, as time passes. So this is really cool. And one thing I wanted to say also is that when podcast content, if you have a host, if you have a guest that is really powerful, that has delivered incredible and impeccable, I would say, content, you really want to be able to repurpose that content. Okay, you can have it as a blog post. You can have you can slice it up into short videos for social media, for TikTok, who knows, for Twitter, for now called X, for Instagram, for Pinterest, and so on and so forth. So you want to repurpose your content so that your podcast is not just being hosted on your website, it is actually living over and over and over. Okay, so that's important. Now, one thing I need to say is that when we talk about the blog post and written content, make sure that the writing is really good. Though, if you can't write yourself, you can outsource the writing to freelancers. Totally possible. Another area where you can actually you can actually beef up your SEO if you're a podcaster is actually transcripts. So you have transcripts, but also blog posts. So transcripts undeniably aid accessibility for your podcast. So there is an argument that putting the entire transcript word for word into your episode's blog post makes every detail from the show easier for search engines to index, right? And it will also be jam-packed with keywords. But transcripts make for lengthy blog posts that read horribly. On top of that, it's questionable whether search engines like Google or Bing may actually pay much attention to this because they value good writing. And so as brilliant as any recorded conversation might have been, the transcript will never look like Hemingway wrote it. So that's why you really want to have, you can have freelancers. You can have freelancers who basically will polish or will repolish, if you will, the transcript. So you have the raw transcript, and you have someone who actually goes over, a writer for sure, that will go over the content and actually rewrite, or at least trying to beef it up, trying to embellish it. So that's totally possible. So it's one of those things where you have to think about it. Now, everything I'm telling you requires a certain budget, right? So you got to have a strategy that really goes beyond saying, okay, this is what I want and this is how I want it. So you got to be ready for that as well. And one thing I also want to say here is that you got to really understand that, SEO really is a long-term game. It doesn't happen overnight. You're not going to rank overnight for certain keywords. So you have to really embed that strategy in your long-term vision. So when we talk about link building, we are talking about another important element for SEO. So SEO is not just about tags, not just about nouns, not just about terms. You also got to think about link building. And link building strategy for podcasters is a pretty powerful thing. You can actually build link through communities. You can reach out to other podcasters who are in your niche. You can actually ask your audience to suggest other podcast hosts that you might reach out to. And you also can appear as a guest on other people's podcasts. This will help you build your community, but also give you more exposure. Also, in other words, you're talking to another audience, a new audience that and that will discover you as a person, but also and this sort of exposure will build your authority and credibility. Okay. So it's one of those things where you want to really get out of there and start cultivating relationship. For you to get backlinks, for you to actually be linked to, you got to really cultivate relationships. That's how the game is played anyway. Okay, so and that will help you in the long run in terms of beefing up your SEO. Thank you so much for your attention. I really appreciate it. In today's conversation, I was talking to you about SEO for podcasters. And let me do a quick recap here. I give you the overview, the steps, and now the recap. Thank you so much. God bless you. I'll see you next time. Until then, remember, stay marvelous.